Hi scholars, this is Ms. Quinones, and today we are going to start working on our Day of the Dead art project. And this is because Day of the Dead is coming up really close. Last week we started talking about Day of the Dead because it happens on the first couple of days of November. November is right around the corner, so we want to make sure that we get this art project done in time for Dia de los Muertos. So Dia de los Muertos, we learned last week, has a lot of really special traditions, a lot of really important symbols. But probably one of the biggest and brightest symbols is the flower of the marigold. Now the marigold, we learned, is a really bright orange, yellow, red flower. And it's like a little circle. It looks like a big pom-pom of a flower. So it's full of petals, and that's exactly what we're going to be making for this project. Now, today is just day one, scholars. Day one means that we're going to be doing sketching, we're going to be doing outlining so that we can plan everything out and make everything exactly how we want it to turn out. So what we're going to do first is actually take a sneak peek at what we will have at the end of today. So as you guys can see, this is the beginning of my marigold. So when we make our marigolds, we're kind of going to do like a zoomed in version. You're not going to see the stem, you're not going to see anything else around it. It's going to be like a zoomed in version of our little pom-pom flower. So today you're going to see we're going to make a lot of petals. We're going to do some outlining with the color, but we're going to leave it blank so that you can fix it however you want this week before you color it. So scholars, if you do not have your materials, I need you to go grab a blank piece of paper, a pencil, and some colored pencils or some crayons if you don't have colored pencils. Okay, scholars? So if you don't have those things in front of you, I want you to hit pause and go get them. If you are all set, scholars, and you already have your paper, you've got your pencil, you've got your colors, then we are going to start making our marigold. Marigold, if you guys remember in Spanish, we would say calendula. And a calendula, we have to start with the center of it. So our marigold, I want you to put your finger in the center of your paper and kind of draw the center around it like really squiggly. So watch me do it and then go ahead and try. I'm going to make a very squiggly center because our marigold is full of petals on the inside too. So we want to make a very squiggly center. It kind of looks a little shaky like a rock. I want you to make it like that because then when you add all that color to it, it's going to look so much better than just having a circle in the middle. So when you are done with your center, that's when we're going to start making the petals. Now a calendula, like this, it looks really complicated, but it's actually not because all you're doing is making the same petal a bunch of different times. So we're going to start with a row or kind of like a circle of petals all around our center first. So what I want you to do is put your pencil down really quick and make a U with your hands. Whenever we make a U with our hands, we've got one hand that's kind of like a scoop and the other hand that's also like a scoop. And this is the shape that you're going to use for those petals. So I'm going to make that first scoop and I'm going to grab my center and then I'm going to start sketching my U. It's kind of like a U shape. So remember how you made a U with your two hands? Whenever you make that U on paper, it's going to touch the center. So we've got one side of the U here, then the other side of the U here, and they're touching the middle of my marigold. After you make that U, I want you to grab another piece of that center, and I want you to kind of squish your petals together. You're going to make another U, really squish them. Remember, our marigolds are full of petals, so don't be afraid to really squish a bunch in there. You're going to keep making U's, scholars, until you make it all the way around your center. It looks like I'm gonna get about 4 U's when I'm all the way done. We can see that I already reached the end because I made it back to that first petal that I made. So scholars, now I'm gonna go ahead and count my U's. I've got 1 U right here, another here, another here, and 1 more here. They're not perfect, but that's okay. I don't want them to be perfect. Flowers are very, very different. There's no flower that looks exactly like another one. So make sure that you are not trying to be too picky. Our flowers are full of differences, so don't be afraid to really, really kind of just go for it, you guys. So now, scholars, what you need to do, if you are all the way done going around, you're going to connect your U's. So right now we have U's that are open, but there's nothing making them connect. So we're going to make kind of like shaky lines like a marigold would have. So you can see I made 1 line from 1 U to another, and then I'm going to do the same thing for every single petal until I make it all the way around. There I have my 4 really, really big petals in the center of my marigold. When you are all the way done with the center of it, go ahead, you can start making U's on the outside. So this is row number 1 that we just made. Now we're going to go into row number 2. We're going to follow the same exact thing. So if you need a reminder, you can use your hands for the shape. We're going to use that same shape, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in between my petals. I'm going to make it really, really big. The more that we zoom out, the bigger our petals get, scholars. Also remember that your petals should still be squished together. I want them to see, or I want you to see how close your petals are. Remember, our marigolds, they look like little pom-poms. They are crazy, crazy squished with petals. So don't be afraid to really put as many as you want. Try and squish as many into as many different places as you want to. Some of your U's are going to look really long. Some of them are going to look really short. But what matters is that you get U's all around. So we can see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 petals in my second row. So in the first one, I only had 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But before I can keep going, I've got to connect the ends of these petals too, just like I did earlier. So remember, I'm going to use that squiggly line that's kind of scratchy, that's not perfect, to connect all of these petals from one side to another. After you do that, scholars, we're just going to add 1 more row of these petals. Also remember, scholars, that they don't need to be perfect, and if you ever need to hit pause or hit rewind on this video, that's a-okay to do that. Don't think that you have to go super fast or that you have to rush through it. Just take your time, and remember, that's why this is day 1, okay? So now, scholars, if you are all the way done with row 1 and you're all the way done with row 2, we're going to make our last row, which is row 3. Row 3 is probably going to have the biggest petals, so really don't be afraid to make your U's really, really wide. Also remember that your U's should be touching the petals that you already made. If your U's are not touching anything or they're touching the center, that maybe we want to go back and work on those again, okay? Don't be afraid to let them touch. Actually, we want them to touch because our marigolds are so stuffed with petals. Scholars, also remember that whenever you sketch, you don't need to push down super hard. That's why we're using a pencil whenever we sketch, whenever we start out, so that if we make a mistake or there's just something that we want to fix, it's way easier to do that whenever you're going really gentle with a pencil. I'm going to make as many U's as I can. We can see how they're kind of getting bigger and bigger and bigger, scholars. All right. So I've got a ton of U's now, everybody. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Earlier, I only had, I think, 7. So now that I've got all of these ready, I need to connect them. I'm going to follow the exact same steps by making those squiggly lines all across. One of my petals kind of hit the top of my paper, but that's okay. Remember, my petals are supposed to be big. They're supposed to be kind of messy. So if they kind of go outside the lines a little bit, that's a-okay. It just means that you're doing your petals as big as you can. Remember that scratchy line that connects everything? We don't want it to be too perfect, and we don't want it to be pointy or too wavy. We just want it to be scratchy. Okay, you don't have to try super hard on it. All right, scholars, so now I've got all of my petals. I think I'm going to fix this petal a little bit just to make it a little bit bigger. And after you've got all of these petals, scholars, what you're going to do is actually grab your colored pencils. If you have crayons, you can use crayons. I'm going to use colored pencils just because I think it's a little bit easier. Now, the first thing that you want to do with this, scholars, is you're not actually going to color things in. We are not coloring things in today because coloring in is going to take us quite a bit of time. So what we need to do first is actually outline. So we've got our sketch. We did our sketch with our pencil. Now we need to make an outline with our colors. So I'm going to start off with orange, and I want you to go around all of the lines that you already made. All of the lines that you made need to have orange in them, as orange is the main color of a marigold. It's also okay if they're not perfect, scholars. You can see I messed up a little bit on that one, but that's okay because our outline is going to get colored in later. So if we mess up a little bit or we go outside our lines or something isn't perfect, that's still okay because it's not done today. We're still on day 1. After we do all of our U's, you're going to connect everything together. So you can see I'm just taking my orange pencil and I'm just going all the way across. And I'm going to finish doing every single one of my petals, scholars. So what I want you to do, actually, instead of watching me do every single one, we're going to hit pause together, okay? You're going to finish all of these orange lines just like me, and then when you're all done with that, you can hit that play button again, okay? So you and me are going to hit pause in 3, 2, and 1. All right, scholars, so if you can see my screen, you can see that I finished all of my orange outline for all of my petals. Not everything is perfect. You can see where some of my lines don't match up, but that's okay. Is what you can actually do whenever you're done is you can erase all the extra lines that you've got. So if you've got some extra pencil marks in some of your petals, it's okay. You can just erase them. Very, very gentle. Don't be too hard with your eraser because it can smudge things. So what we're going to do right now is actually take our other colors. So we already used orange. Now I want you to grab your red. Your red colored pencil is going to decorate the very, very inside of your U's. So we're going to practice the first few together, and then you're going to pause the video and do it on your own again, okay? So what I want you to do is grab your very first petal. Instead of coloring it in, what I want you to do is go like halfway down the petal, and I want you to just go back and forth with that red. You're not going to do the tops, you're not going to do the inside, you're just doing some of the parts that have the orange already. So you can see how I'm just doing half of my U's for my petals. I'm just giving them a little bit of red so they stand out some more. I'm not going all the way up on my petals either, scholars. Remember, I'm just doing half. Now, if you want to, you can hit pause now. But as soon as I finish this second line, I'm going to hit pause, and you and I can work on getting that red in on our own, okay? So remember, you're just going to do half of the petal on the inside with a little bit of red on it, okay? Let's hit pause in 3, 2, 1. All right, scholars, if you can see my screen now, you can see how I've got red on the very inside of all of my lines. Remember, it doesn't have to be perfect because we're not going to color in today. When we color in, it's going to make everything look way, way cleaner, okay? So now what I want you to do is grab your yellow colored pencil or crayon, whatever you got, and you're going to do the outside of the petal. So what you're going to do, all of your squiggly lines, all of your really like scratchy lines that you made, you're going to go over them with some yellow. This is just to make the ends of every petal stand out a little bit more. And you don't need to go super, super hard. You don't need to spend a bunch of time on this. I just want you to get a little bit of yellow on there so that you can see the ends of the petals better. Right now, you can see how the ends of the inside are brighter and stand out more than the ones on the outside. So I want you to do that for all of those squiggly straight lines at the very, very top. And remember, if you don't follow your lines exactly, that's okay. Because petals and flowers, marigolds, they're not perfect either. So if you're trying to make everything super, super perfect, don't worry about it. We're still in day 1, so we have lots of time to fix any mistakes or anything we want. Remember, scholars, if you finish before me, you can take your eraser and you can erase all those extra lines that you've got. If you need any extra time, you can just pause the video and catch up whenever you are finished with this step. All right, scholars, so now it's starting to look a lot more like a zoomed in marigold. When you see me again later this week for Wednesday's video, we are going to work on blending and getting all of these colors just right. So when we are finished with this project, I'm going to give you a sneak peek of what it's going to look like. When we are finished, we're going to see how all of these colors that we just used blend together to make these really, really bright little pom-pom marigolds. So you can see we used a lot of orange to make these last time, but you can also see how we've got those yellow ends. You can see how in the middle we've got some red, and then you can also see our squiggly centers. So remember, marigolds, because they look a little bit messy and are so jam-packed with color, they don't need to be perfect this time. So whenever you finish this outline, you're going to save this. You're going to wait until Wednesday so that we can color everything in and make it look a lot brighter. Okay, scholars, just finish this today. And if you need any extra help, just let me know or try rewinding the video just in case you may have missed something. Okay, scholars, I'm really excited to see what you have done. And when you are all done with the outline, I want you to take a picture or show me on Flipgrid. Okay, scholars? Just show me what you've got so far. It doesn't have to be done, but just show me that you are working on it. All right, guys, I'll see you very, very soon. Bye.